Have you ever shared something deeply personal, only to wish, afterward, that you had stayed silent at this age? We often don't feel the need to hide things anymore. We just want to speak, to lighten our hearts. Maybe it's an old memory, a sincere feeling, but only hours later, we notice something has shifted, not because what we said was wrong, but because the way our loved ones looked at us somehow changed. And we start to wonder, are they now more worried about us than they need to be? Have they begun to see us as fragile, uncertain, not quite the same? The truth is, this happens more often than we realize. As we get older, we tend to share more of our private thoughts, but sometimes that honesty doesn't lead to closeness. Instead, it quietly creates distance. No one says anything, but we feel it. Something is different. Over time, I've come to understand something important. Keeping a few things to ourselves can actually help us feel lighter and preserve our connection with those we love in a gentler, more peaceful way. And the good news is, it's not difficult because the solution is simple and practical. We don't need to go completely silent. We just need to know what to share and what to quietly hold. Like someone who's lived long enough to realize, not everyone needs to know every corner of our inner life. In today's video, I'd like to sit with you for a while and share 6 things I once thought should be spoken aloud, but later realized were better left unspoken. Maybe one of these will speak to something in your own life, and perhaps it will help you find your own way to live more gently, more peacefully with the people you care about. If any part of this feels familiar to you, I invite you to stay until the very end, because what you're holding quietly inside just might be the very thing I'm about to speak out loud. There are things in our past we once thought we should share, only to later realize perhaps it's best to let them rest. When we've walked a long road in life, our minds tend to revisit old stories, especially the ones that still ache a little. The wrong turns, the regrets, the quiet sorrows we once kept hidden deep inside. Sometimes, we feel the urge to speak them aloud, not to complain, but as a way to teach, to pass on wisdom, to tell our children or grandchildren. Be careful. I've been there. But what we hope to offer as a lesson isn't always received the way we imagine. The listener wasn't there. They didn't grow up in our time. They didn't pay the price we paid. And so, our story intended to be helpful might only leave them puzzled, uncomfortable, or even quietly pitying us. They may not say it, but we feel it in the shift of their eyes, in the silence that follows. I used to believe that sharing my biggest mistakes was a sign of honesty. But over time, I've come to understand being honest doesn't mean telling everything. Not always, not everywhere. Some stories, when kept to ourselves, help preserve a quiet dignity for ourselves and for those listening. It's not about shame. It's about knowing that we don't have to display every scar to prove we've known pain. A simple line I learned that lesson the hard way can be enough. Enough to pass along the message, without reopening the wound. Big mistakes. We've all had them, but not every one of them needs to become a public teaching. Some are better left as private reminders, a quiet guide we carry within us. Not something to lay bare again and again. And by choosing silence, we protect the image our loved ones hold of us. Not a figure defined by regrets, but a steady presence they can look up to, without needing to analyze or explain us. In the end, people rarely remember every story we've told, but they do remember how it felt to be around us. If you carry something inside that once brought you regret, don't rush to share it. Don't blame yourself either. Just let it rest quietly, as a small, private chapter in the life you've lived. And if you feel ready, I'd be honored if you shared a few words in the comments below. Have you ever kept something to yourself, not out of fear, but out of peace? And what has that peace brought you? Now, I'd like to talk about something that seems small at first, but often causes quiet worry among our loved ones, especially as we grow older. There are things we feel in our bodies each day, but that doesn't mean they always need to be spoken out loud. As we age, these little discomforts become more familiar. A dull ache in the back, stiff shoulders on a rainy morning, a restless night that stretches too long. They're not serious, but they return often enough to wear us down in quiet ways. And sometimes we think if I just mention it, maybe someone will listen. Maybe I'll feel a bit lighter. But over time, we start to notice something shift. Our loved ones begin looking at us with different eyes. The way they speak to us, the things they ask. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about joy or stories or the beauty of the day. It's about the pain, the pills, the sleep, the symptoms. And without meaning to, we've painted a version of ourselves that looks more fragile than we truly are. No longer the strong parent or steady grandparent they once leaned on, but someone they now feel the need to watch over, to manage, to protect. No one means harm by it, but still, it can feel like something has quietly been taken from us, our place in the family, our sense of being fully alive. So I've learned that not every ache needs a voice. Some pains, they're mine to carry. I understand them. I know when to rest, when to move, when to let them be. Instead of repeating my discomfort, I might say, today I spent a little time in the garden. The smell of damp soil was strangely comforting, because I know my family doesn't need to hear every single thing that troubles me. What they really need is to see that I'm still living my days fully, that my spirit is steady, even when the body falters. We don't need to pretend we're perfectly healthy, but we can choose to focus on what still brings peace, because real strength doesn't mean never hurting. It means choosing to face life with clarity, with calm, even when the aches are there. When we speak of the things that bring us joy, a good meal, an old tune that makes us smile, we offer our family a lasting image, not of someone growing weaker, but of someone still full of spirit, still present, still clear-eyed. Sometimes, holding back a little pain isn't about denial. It's a quiet act of love to let those we care about live their lives without carrying the invisible weight of our daily discomforts. If you're living with aches and soreness that no one sees, know that I understand you, and I believe you're stronger than you think, not because you suffer alone, but because you found a way to carry it with grace. If you've ever chosen not to speak about a pain, not out of fear, but out of love, feel free to share that with me in the comments. Maybe, just maybe, we're already understanding each other more than we know. And while health may be hard to talk about, there's something else perhaps even more delicate that lives quietly in the heart, those dreams we once had, that never came true, but never really left us. Some dreams once felt so big, so full of life and hope, but in the end, they settled quietly into memory. There's something curious about getting older. It gives us time, more than we've had in years, time to look back, to sit with the life we've lived, and the parts of it we left undone. On a quiet afternoon, the mind often drifts to the dreams that never came true. A job we once longed for, a trip that never happened, or something more personal, a calling, a passion that we nurtured in silence, but eventually set aside, not because we gave up, but because life asked something else of us: family, responsibility, change, and we did what we had to do. There are times when we think about sharing these dreams with our children, our grandchildren, just to say, I once wanted this too. But when we do, the response isn't always what we hope for. Some listen in silence, unsure of what to say. Some feel sad for us, as if we missed something too important. And some quietly carry guilt, wondering if they were the reason we let go. And so the distance begins, not out of anger, but out of not fully understanding. The dream, once so alive inside us, now feels small in their eyes, and we feel small too. That's why, in time, I chose to keep those dreams to myself, not because they weren't real, but because they'd become a quiet part of me, a part that didn't need sympathy or explanation. Instead of talking about what I never did, I now speak about what I learned along the way: patience, resilience, the beauty of sacrifice, the meaning I found, even when the path shifted. In the end, it's not how many dreams we reach that defines us, but how we carried ourselves even when those dreams stayed out of reach. Our grandchildren don't need to know every wish we once had. What they need is to see us living fully today, A grandfather, a grandmother, who smiles at the present, who embraces what is not what could have been. That image, that quiet acceptance, teaches more than any story of regret ever could. When we speak about the life we've lived, not the life we missed, we give our family something beautiful, a reminder that even an imperfect life can be rich and full and deeply meaningful, because some dreams, even unfulfilled, still matter. They led us to choices, to love, to moments that shaped everything else. If you carry an old dream in your heart, don't be sad. Hold it like a keepsake. It doesn't have to be explained. It only needs to be cherished. And if you feel like sharing something, just leave a small note in the comments. Not the whole story, just a feeling. Someone out there might be quietly feeling the same. And now, after dreams we've chosen to keep, let's gently move towards something even closer to home. The quiet heartbreak that sometimes comes not from what we missed, but from the people we love most. Sometimes, the heaviest feeling in our hearts doesn't come from the outside world, but from the very people we love the most. As our children and grandchildren grow up, they start to walk their own paths, make their own decisions, and not every choice they make feels easy for us to accept. There are moments when we feel let down, not because they've done something wrong, but because they've gone a different way than the one we quietly hoped for. We once imagined that grandchild choosing a steady career. We hoped a son or daughter would settle nearby, close enough to visit often, to be there when we needed them. But they chose differently. And even when we say nothing, a quiet sense of disappointment settles inside. I believe this is something every parent, every grandparent, has felt at one point or another. It doesn't come with anger. It doesn't come with blame. It's more like a cool breeze at dusk, soft, but hard to shake. At times, we think, maybe I should say something. Maybe they need to know how I feel. But I've come to learn that words spoken from disappointment, even when wrapped in love, can sometimes do more harm than good. To them, it might sound like judgment, like comparison, like they've somehow fallen short in our eyes. And instead of drawing them closer, our words push them away. Not because they don't care, but because they don't want to see that sadness in our eyes again. So I began to wonder, is there a way to care deeply without causing hurt? And I realized silence is not giving up. Silence can be a powerful form of trust. When we hold back from judging or trying to change someone, we give them space to become who they are. And when they know that no matter what, someone is there, still listening, still loving, that's when real connection begins. There are times when I've sat next to my child in silence, no advice, no opinions. Just a warm cup of tea passed from one hand to another. And in that small moment, they could feel Dad is still here, still with me, still proud. Oddly enough, that quiet presence has done more to close the distance than 1,000 carefully chosen words ever could. Because when we support our family silently, without control, they feel safe, they feel accepted. We don't have to agree with every decision they make. We only need to be there as someone who understands that every person must be allowed to stumble and must be given space to find their own footing. Family isn't about control. It's about knowing when to let go so that love still feels like love, not like pressure. If you've ever felt sad or disappointed because your children or grandchildren chose differently than you'd hoped, I see you. I really do. But maybe ask yourself gently, was it truly about them? Or was it about your need to feel safe, to feel close, to hold on to something familiar? True understanding doesn't always come from saying more. Sometimes it comes from knowing when to be still, when to listen, and when to quietly believe in them. If you've ever chosen silence, not out of surrender, but out of love, please feel free to share your thoughts below, because sometimes what we choose not to say becomes the greatest gift we give to those we care for most. And now, after all the hopes and quiet tensions that family can bring, we arrive at another part of life, something practical. Yes, but also deeply emotional when not handled with care, the matter of money and what we leave behind. When we talk about wills and money, we're really talking about something every older adult must face. Sooner or later, growing older brings many things: a deeper calm, a clearer view of what matters, and yes, a responsibility to set things in order. Not just to leave our family with assets, but to leave them with peace. No confusion, no conflict, a departure that carries no burden. I've thought about this more times than I can count, and like many others, I once believed that sharing everything early would ease the way. Let them know the plan, I thought, so they can feel secure, so there are no surprises later. But I came to realize something. Some conversations need the right moment, because when you talk about inheritance too early, you might find, even without meaning to, that people begin to see you differently. Not in a greedy way, but with a kind of carefulness, a hesitation, even a quiet discomfort. The focus shifts. It's no longer about life, but about the things you'll someday leave behind. Who will get what? Who will be responsible for what? And slowly, the warm ties of family can begin to feel shaded by calculations and unspoken comparisons. It's not that anyone's wrong. It's just that money, once spoken of too soon, has a way of changing how people think, even if they don't want it to. So I chose another path. I've arranged everything, clearly, carefully, with the help of someone I trust, but I keep it quiet, tidy, waiting until the time is truly right. I don't want family dinners clouded by thoughts of who inherits what. I don't want my words to be listened to through the filter of future gains, because what I truly wish to leave behind isn't a house, a savings account, or a box of heirlooms. It's the sound of laughter around a dinner table. It's the way I loved them, the way I showed up when they needed me, the moments we shared, not the things I'll leave. When the day comes, I trust that everything will be passed on in the right way, at the right time, with kindness and with clarity, because I prepared it with both wisdom and love. If you're thinking about these things now, I'm not telling you to stay silent, but I do invite you to think about timing, when to speak, and when to let things rest quietly for now. Because peace in a family rarely comes from who gets the most. It comes from everyone feeling equally loved. If this has been on your mind, I welcome your thoughts in the comments. You don't have to share the details, just let me know. Are you choosing to speak or to hold back for a while, and why and now? After all this talk of things we own, I'd like to gently turn to something that can't be listed in a will, but often weighs just as heavily in the heart. That quiet feeling we rarely speak of, called loneliness. There are feelings so quiet, no one else can see them, yet we carry them with us through the long stretch of growing old. Not everyone who lives alone feels lonely, and not everyone surrounded by family feels connected. Sometimes, loneliness comes in the most ordinary moments. A chilly evening when the house feels too still, a morning when no one calls your name, or a quiet seat in a familiar room, where you feel like a stranger in your own story. These feelings are real, and they're deeply personal. They come to those of us who've lived through decades of change, who've watched the world shift and spin, and who now, quietly, feel ourselves standing just outside the center of it all, the hardest part. We don't want to speak this loneliness aloud because we're afraid it'll make our children sad. We don't want them to feel guilty for not being here more often. And we never, ever want to become an emotional burden to the ones we love, so we hold it in. We smile when they call, even if it's just for a minute. We say, "I'm fine. Everything's okay." When they ask, then we sit quietly, watching the sun slip down from the porch, listening to the ticking clock, unsure of who we'd even talk to, if we dared. I've felt that, and I know many others our age have too. It's not a heavy sadness, not a sharp pain, just something soft and constant, like a slow tide moving in and out with each passing day. Later, I chose something different. I stopped bottling it up, but I didn't place it on the shoulders of the younger ones either, because I understand now every generation has its own struggles. Our children love us, but they're busy trying to survive in a world that no longer moves at our pace. Instead of waiting for them to understand, I began learning how to keep myself company. An old song, a good book, a small plant by the window, simple things, quiet companions, and sometimes I call an old friend. We don't talk much, just enough to remember who we were, just enough to warm the heart. What I've come to see is this: no one understands us like those who walk the same road. The conversations don't need explaining. Because we've all known the same silences. Loneliness, when embraced gently, loses its sharpness. It becomes a private pause, a space to reflect, to remember what matters. And when we learn to carry our solitude with grace, we also protect the ones we love from feelings they aren't meant to hold. We give them the freedom to live their lives without guilt, while still knowing our love is right there beside them. Not demanding, not disappointed, just quietly present. If you're feeling lonely these days, I want you to know you are not alone. Many are walking this road beside you, even if you don't see them. And if it feels right, leave a few words below. You never know, someone may be listening, someone who understands more than you think. Because sometimes, just one shared thought is enough to soften the silence. And when we learn to live peacefully with ourselves, everything we've held back, the sorrow, the joy, begins to feel as light as a breeze at the end of day. Dear friend, we've lived long enough to know not everything needs to be spoken out loud. Some thoughts, some feelings are more complete, more meaningful when they're held quietly inside. It's not because we've closed ourselves off. It's because we've learned sometimes. Peace comes from what we choose to keep, as a way of protecting the relationships we hold dear, as a way of preserving calm for both the one who listens and the one who speaks. At this stage in life, we no longer feel the need to explain everything. We don't need to prove we're right or wrong. We just need to live in a way that's kind, that's gentle, that's true to what our weathered hearts have come to trust. Holding something back doesn't mean we're hiding it. It means we're choosing. It means we understand that sometimes a quiet glance, a private pause, can build more connection than 1,000 well-meaning words. If you're still listening now, I trust that you understand what I've been saying, not just with your mind, but through your own lived experience. And if you've seen a piece of yourself in any part of this reflection, I invite you to leave a few words below. Share a feeling, share a moment you once chose to carry alone, or simply pass this video along to someone who might need to hear a gentle word today. We are still here, still quietly walking our path. And with each step, if we plant it with compassion and grace, we'll leave behind a trail of something lasting, something tender, something true, on this quiet road we now call peace.